Here we go. My name is Gunnar Soros. I'm the host of Craft Beer Blab. I'm glad everyone is on here. We can get a great discussion going on craft beer. I'm also a cyclist, and I co-host with my buddy Jonah Di Pasquale, the one and only, who hosts the Bike Chat 101 on Thursday evenings. So be sure to stop by again then to join us on that show. This weekend or this week, we will be, Jonah will be heading up probably by himself, as I will be with family here and there and everywhere, doing Thanksgiving with different family members. So I won't be able to attend that one, but be sure to tune in. We've had some great guests in the past. T. Houston 57, nice to see you on here. Thanks for joining in. Again, I am a lifelong cyclist and craft beer lover. First off, let's before we start giving into well, you know what? My first beer, I have a list of about 5 beers that I was going to recommend for Thanksgiving, and I'll do the first. I guess we'll say styles, 5 styles of beer. With each style having at least one beer in particular. So the first one is the good old American Amber Lager and or American Amber Ale, which I'm not a big fan of lagers, but, you know, on Thanksgiving, light, crisp, not overpowering, balanced flavor, goes well with almost anything. Plus, if you're bringing it for other people, or if you're hosting Thanksgiving and you want beer that other people will drink also, it's hard to go wrong with them. So Sam Adams Boston Lager is an excellent American Amber Lager. I know it's kind of pushing the boundaries of craft beer now. I think they are still considered craft, but they're not as microbrew or crafty as some others. But to me, that doesn't necessarily matter. If they make good beer, they make good beer. And, you know, that kind of leads me into something else here, but we'll talk about that in just a second after I give my other. So I said American craft lagers, then American Amber Ale, which I would recommend New Belgium's Fat Tire Ale. Not only because, obviously, Fat Tire, mountain bike tie-in, cyclist, but also because it's just a great beer. One of my relatives prefers Miller Lite with tons of ice cubes. Wow, yeah, basically watering it down with more water. Yeah, I've heard of that before, though. Long time ago, I would drink Coors Light with ice. Fat Tire flows like water. It is a lighter, crisper beer, but it has a lot of character to it. It has like biscuit and light malt flavors. And that will kind of pair really well with kind of the starchy and the bready, you know, if you're having rolls and mashed potatoes, it'll kind of complement those flavors very well. Plus, again, like Sam Adams Boston Lager, it's not overpowering in any particular flavor. So it's not overly hoppy, it's not overly biscuit or overly malty flavor. Jonah's asking if there's any snow yet. We've had snow. Well, I'm sure he's asking for in Denver there. But we have had a little bit of snow here, but most of it's melted out here in Rochester, Minnesota. Mountains are getting dumped. That's awesome if you love snow. I'm not too much of a snow fan. Now, what I kind of wanted to do is start off the show. So we had my first pick for Thanksgiving beers. Then I wanted to jump into kind of hop topics, get it? Hops, as in beer. We can talk about Surly in just a moment. I know you got a special package, and hopefully did you get a chance to refrigerate and enjoy any? Yeah, no problem. Anyway, first thing, and if anyone wants to jump into a seat, feel free to do that. I'm more than open to having other people to talk to while I'm on here. But so, hop topics. Have I had any Sierra Nevada beers? I have. I love Sierra Nevada beers. Okay, Jonah, trying to jump in again. Awesome. Yeah, Sierra Nevada beers are excellent. So first hop topic I wanted to talk about, and it's kind of, in a way, it's old news because it actually was last week, but it is kind of big news. So Ballast Point recently sold out, and they were purchased by Constellation Brands, which owns Corona, Modelo. So basically, a big beer company buys a small brewery. Why does this matter? Because, well, basically now they can't be a craft beer anymore. And not only that, but they were purchased for a huge amount of money. I mean, we're talking $1 billion with a B. Now, I don't fault anyone for selling out because personally, if someone offered me $1 billion to, I don't know, take over this show, I would be gone in a minute and say, hey, thanks for the money. Yep, red flag Dan. When money talks, people walk. And when you're talking billions, it's very easy to say, you know what, I'm taking the money. So, I'm not going to fault them for taking the money. I do hope, though, that their brewery doesn't change. Lots of craft beer to fill its void if it turns down. Yeah, that's the other great thing is that currently I think there's over 4,000 craft beer breweries in the United States right now, which is, I think it's an all-time high, even from pre-prohibition days. So there's lots of choices and lots of beer to drink. Now, Ballast Point has been a really good beer. We just recently did the habanero sculpin, or Jonah did habanero sculpin, and I did grapefruit sculpin. Yes, grapefruit sculpin. Just had that recently, and it was delicious. Tar Heel Sims Brooklyn Brown Ale is really good. I haven't had any of Brooklyn's beers yet. But so, and that's not the only beer recently to have sold out. Lagunitas recently sold to, I can't remember the brand, but Lagunitas was sold, I think, for $1 million or more, millions of dollars, I think. And they're another one that people are worried about. Yes, to Heineken, social brew with us, social brew us. Exactly. In addition to other ones also. And, the struggle is, and I've heard stories of, I think I recently read an article about craft breweries that have sold out that then, owners leave, workers switch, they start messing around with the recipes, and maybe they're not making as much money as they thought they would be from this craft brewery, and so they start playing with things, and all of a sudden what was a great beer and brewery all of a sudden is something that is not so good anymore. And then they go out of, they basically put it under the rug and let it die, which is a shame. Hopefully Ballast Point and Lagunitas, both excellent beers that I love, hopefully they can keep what it is about them that makes it good. Next thing I wanted to talk about is something that I just seen recently, and it sounds awesome. I'm going to post the link here in the chat. There is a Kickstarter campaign for a company called Round Table Hops. Now, a majority of the hops that are used in craft beers are grown in, hi Stephen, thank you for joining in, glad you're here. A majority of the hops that are used in American craft beers are grown in the Pacific Northwest. There are some smaller hop farms all around the US. Jonah says Android UX for Blab is not so good. I can't even imagine what it looks like on there. I'm sure I would think you would have to use the browser in Android to even be able to access the site, which is a shame. And no, I'm sorry, Jonah. I'm sorry you can't be talking, but keep listening, join. join the chat and stay in. And again, if anyone wants to jump into an open seat, please feel free. As far as I know, I have it open. So if anyone wants to jump in and talk and say their thoughts on anything. So I was going back to Roundtable Hops. Yes, Red Flag Dan, Minnesota company. So, everyone's looking at hydroponic hops and the ability to grow hops year round and have harvests, which will be great. I mean, imagine if you could set up a farm closer to a brewery and have fresh hops year round for your brews. It just seems like it would be a no-brainer. I think if anyone gets a chance to check out that Kickstarter campaign, if you have some extra bucks, kick in, because I think they're gonna be onto something really good. I mean, they've had, I think, 1 or 2 seasons of grow cycles, and they seem to be doing really well. So they're onto something. That's something to watch out for in the future. Also, if they ever get to a point of investment, if you have money to invest. Now, back to the main topic. Rumor has it that BrewDog is looking to buy significant acreage to grow hops near them in Columbus, Ohio. And see, yeah, that's the thing, is a lot of brewers and breweries are looking for locally sourced product. I mean, because you know what? You can have a brewery close to where you are, but if all your grains and all your hops and everything else is coming from elsewhere, how local is the beer? So I know here in Rochester, Minnesota, we have a brewery that opened up recently, Forager Brewing, that they are trying very hard to source local ingredients for their beer. And it's not to say that other breweries are junk or crap for not doing that. It comes down to if you're able to. There are a couple of hop farms in Minnesota, and if Roundtable Hops takes off, then that will be another source. But okay, let me get back to beers for Thanksgiving. And again, I want to thank everyone for joining in tonight, because I just like talking about beer, and I like you guys. So hopefully, no problem. Again, tonight I will be drinking Dragon's Milk Reserve with raspberries. This is a bourbon barrel stout. I believe it's an Imperial stout. So yeah, alcohol by volume 11%, vintage 2015. New Holland Brewery is out of Michigan. They are pretty well distributed. Blab is about to get sloppy. Yes, it is. I'm going to be pouring it into, this is an actual stout glass. You've only had the regular. See, I was going to get the regular, and then the guy at the store said, hey, I have reserve here. And that kind of piqued my interest, and I'm like, oh, what's that? So then he goes, well, we have with raspberries, we have with chili, and we also have a coffee vanilla version. And so he actually put together a mixed 4-pack, and these are 12-ounce bottles, mixed 4-pack with one of the raspberry, one of the chili, and 2 of the coffee, of which I had the chili and shared a coffee one with a friend. And we're doing a first pour and taste of this guy right here. Again, I'm using a actual stout glass. I believe it's developed, can't remember the glass name, but the mouthfeel of the regular was great. Yeah, you know what? I was really impressed by the chili version, because I had another chili beer and it was overpowering chili taste, but on New Holland's Dragon's Milk with chili, there was just enough chili to give a little bit of heat, but not overpower everything else on the beer. Yeah, see, and that is a common issue that I have with chili beers too, is that if it's just overly hot or overly chilly and it masks or takes away from the taste of everything else, then I'm not too much of a fan. Anyway, here we go. Here's a pour. I'm not sure if I'll be able to get the whole thing in. So this glass is specifically developed for stouts. Yes, it would be great to have a discussion about the ideal glasses for various beer styles. And there are a couple of different ones. Spiegelau, yes, Spiegelau. And they did it in conjunction with Left Hand Brewing. Thanks, Jonah, for trying to jump in. I appreciate it. Hopefully, yeah, we'll talk later. Have a great night. So this particular glass is made for stouts. Supposedly the shape is to get a nice thick head, as well as this area here. I don't know what you would call this, but it's supposed to help as you're drinking it, help re-agitate it and keep a little foam head on there. They do make great glasses. Wow, and the smell. If you like Russian Imperial stouts, this has a very, very dark fruit. Cherries. Old Rasputin is your fave? Nice. I haven't had that one. I've heard it. I've had Surly Darkness, as well as Fulton makes I believe they're War and Peace. Dan's had Old Rasputin. Nice. See, there's so many beers out there to try. I got to try all of them. I'd like to try, but it always falls back. Well, see, then that's my thing too, is I'm a hophead. I like IPAs, and so, and even not IPAs, but just hoppy beers, and so I tend to pick those. But I do like a good heavy stout. So nice cream colored head on there. Very dark, 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 dark. Cheers, everyone. Oh, wow, that is good. There's a sweetness to it. There's a vanilla. You know, if I didn't know that it was brewed with raspberries, I probably wouldn't say, oh yeah, well, it's a fruit beer or it has raspberries. But knowing that there is some, you kind of get this little bit of a brighter fruit note in there also. You know, a lot of Russian Imperial stouts are known for like dark fruits. Would it mix well with Thanksgiving food? You know what? That's what I was going to get into, is my fifth choice for Thanksgiving was going to be Imperial Russian or just Imperial stouts to go with not necessarily the meal of Thanksgiving, but with dessert. You know, the darker pumpkin pie with whipped cream on top. Be excellent with that. Difficult to successfully bring a lot of fruit out in a stout. You know, I tend to think, well, not so much with regular stouts, but with the Imperial stouts, a lot of times they take on like raisins and plums and darker fruits, cherries sometimes, and that's why I like them. So that was going to be my number 5 pick, was dark stouts for dessert time on Thanksgiving. So, and my thought on that was, if you can get your hands on it, Surly Darkness. If not, there's another, let's see, what's another one that I would recommend? Dragon's Milk Reserve, yeah. Surly Darkness and Fulton's War and Peace. Hello, Luke. Thank you for joining in. And once again, thank you everyone for joining in. Again, if you get a chance to, please feel free to go ahead and tell the little bird up in the corner there to invite other people in if you're enjoying the show, as well as Feel free, if you do have something that you want to say or chit chat with, go ahead and take a seat. There is an open seat right now, and so I welcome anyone to come in. We'll go back to my list of beers that I would recommend. And if anyone else has any thoughts on beers that they would recommend, please feel free to jump in. Let me know. So we've covered the basic American Amber Lager or American Amber Ale. Am I familiar with Gewürztraminer wine? Yes. I like Gewürztraminer, especially with turkey. I also like Rieslings with turkey for very much the similar reasons. You know, they have that kind of bright note to it, but they're also sweet. Love those. That's an excellent choice. Yeah, sweet wines, definitely. I do like Gewürztraminers, and I do like Rieslings, so they're very good. Local brewery has brewed a beer for Thanksgiving. See, that would be excellent to try. I would love to see how that turned out. Yeah. My second choice for, and this, some people may argue with me about this, but my second thought for Thanksgiving during mealtime is, and we're getting kind of into, we're building off of that malty sweetness of the American Ambers, and we're going into Oktoberfest-Märzen styles, which I think, again, because of the maltiness and the caramelness in there and not a huge hop presence, it will be really good with a lot of the starchy foods that you have with Thanksgiving meals. A lot of the breads, a lot of the stuffings, a lot of the mashed potatoes, and may not have, you know, any of the am I a fan of winter warmers? I do like winter warmers. They're nice because, you know, they're kind of like, well, I mean, they kind of warm you up. I mean, they kind of give you this nice little warm feeling as you're drinking them. Again, I can't say anything but good things about this beer. Again, Dragon's Milk Reserve with raspberries. If anyone gets a chance to get this, please do. It's well worth it. Very tasty. So my choices for Oktoberfest beers is, first off, Summit Oktoberfest. Summit is a regional Minnesota brewery. You can get pretty much anywhere in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, as well as all over other places too. But I know there for sure. And their Oktoberfest should still be available almost everywhere. And it's just a classic, you know, I like Summit Brewing for having just classic solid beers. They don't go, I mean, some of their beers are, you know, they tend to brew true to style. So their Oktoberfest-Märzen is very much a Oktoberfest beer. Then I would also recommend Sam Adams Oktoberfest, which again, maybe not considered a craft beer, you know, between how large they are and how well they're distributed. So it's kind of pushing the boundaries there, but it's, again, a solid Oktoberfest beer that is actually probably, I think it's a little hoppier than, say, Summit's Oktoberfest. Then third choice for that, because I've had a couple of different Oktoberfest style beers, and this kind of goes to my fanboy status of Surly Brewing, is Surly Fest. Now, it's not a traditional Oktoberfest style. It's their interpretation of the Surly Fest style that is actually hopped a little more extreme than a standard Oktoberfest beer. But still very drinkable, very well balanced, and actually might complement turkey and stuffing and bready food for Thanksgiving, because the hops will kind of add a little spiciness to it, a little brighter flavor. So that would be something to consider. Now, let me grab You know what's dangerous about this beer is that it is 11%, but it's not, you don't taste the alcohol in it. So it's not like, I've had, yeah, I've had high gravity Imperial or not double IPAs, double. We'll try Surly if I can get it. Also, really like Real Ale Lost Gold IPA. Nice. Surly has, and actually Surly's made my list for a couple of beers on my list today. So, where is that from? Surly or Real Ale? Surly is a local Minnesota brewery that distributes right now strictly in Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin and Chicago. Sierra Nevada Oktoberfest. Nice. Definitely cheers to you. I don't know if I've had Sierra Nevada's Oktoberfest. I don't know if I've seen it actually here. If I have, maybe I've passed it over for one of the local offerings here. But definitely, I do love Sierra Nevada Pale Ale as well as their IPAs. Very good stuff. Thanks, Dan, for putting up the link to Surly Brewing. Being from Minnesota, it's easy to be a Surly Brewing fanboy. They make a lot of great beers. And thank you, Roof Rack Ranger, for putting up Real Ale Brewing's links. I do appreciate that. And I do appreciate the conversation here that we're having. I appreciate everyone joining in. Again, just to let anyone that's joined in, if anyone wants to grab a seat, feel free to, and we can talk that way. Thirsty Planet, nice. I will have to check them out too. Okay, third style. We're getting a little bit more daring and a little bit more into maybe styles that people haven't tried. But I think this would really be good with Thanksgiving meal. Again, we're talking the turkey and all the trimmings. The stout I was saving as strictly, not strictly, that's the thing about beer is that anyone can drink anything at any time. You don't have to say, okay, well, a stout, it's heavy and it's sweet and you got to do it for dessert. Break the rules if you want. Have a stout with appetizers if you want. It's not a big deal. It is beer. Just remember to pour it in a glass because that's the best way to drink. But so my third style, number 3, I shouldn't put 5, 3. Third style is I'll probably butcher the way you say it, but Biere de Garde. I want to say Briere, but I think it's Biere de Garde, which is a Belgian farmhouse ale. Now, a lot of people are afraid of Belgian beers because they think of Belgian sours. This is not a sour. It is a farmhouse ale. So earlier I was talking about how in northern France and in Belgium, and some Trappist breweries, how they do it is that they have this farmhouse or this barn. This would be perfect after a cross race. Nice, excellent. Would love to race cross and drink any beer, actually. Beer and cyclocross go together. Dan loves Belgian beers. I love the history behind it. So farmhouse ales and Trappist beers generally, so most American breweries, when you brew beer, you add in yeast, and you usually buy yeast from like they have yeast making companies. I guess they're like chemists or something. Not that yeast is a chemical, but you buy yeast and you pitch it into your beer. Tommy Crowder's in the house. Nice to see you on here, Tommy. In Belgium and in France, a lot of these farmhouse breweries and Trappist breweries, what they do is that they have these huge open vats and they boil the beer, they boil the wort, they make the beer, and what they do is they open up the kettles, the steam rises up into the rafters of these farmhouses, and the yeast will naturally fall down from the rafters. And so the yeast that they have, they've been using years and years and years, and it's just naturally coming down into the beer and open fermentation, spontaneous fermentation. And it's a great way to brew. You know, you don't have to buy yeast. You don't have to, do anything special. You just boil it, yeast falls down, and you got it. So a Biere de Garde is a Belgian farmhouse style of beer. Generally, it has kind of it has a malty flavor to it, similar to, Oktoberfest or amber ales. But what's nice is that they also have a very dry finish, and they kind of have a little bit of a spicy hop flavor to it, not overpowering. But then they also have this kind of little bit of kind of what I call funky and musty flavor to it. Not like a bad funky or a bad musty, but just kind of this little bit of funkiness from wild yeast. So the beer that I would recommend in this style is another Surly. Again, fanboy. Yeah, good funky. Exactly, Roof Rack Ranger. Good funky. So Surly has a beer called Doomtree, which is it's an interesting beer in just how they came about it. Surly was big into collaborations last year or two, and what they did was they collaborated not with another brewery, but with a hip-hop collective group called Doomtree. And they kind of collaborated together and came up with this recipe for a beer. They put it out there. They tested it. It tastes really good. And it is a little more hopped than a standard, what would be considered a standard style of Biere de Garde. So my hophead kind of feelings kind of come through there. But again, excellent beer. That would be one that I would recommend. Then from there, we go into my fourth choice, which is taking it just a little step further, which is a Saison, which is also a Belgian or Northern France farm-style ale. But generally, they're similar in flavors, but they have just a little bit more fruity and tart flavors to it. Not quite into the sours range, not where you're puckering your face or anything like that, but just a nice little bit tart flavor. And so in that regards, a Saison, to me, reminds me of like a more of a tart Riesling or a tart Gewürztraminer. Not, there's some wines that are more on the sweet side and more on the tart side. This Saison would be just a little tartar. Got to check out Rockmill Brewery in Ohio. Tasty and true. I will have to check them out. That sounds interesting. And in Ohio, I'd love to check that out. Rockmill Brewery. Let me look that up real quickly here. Rockmill Brewery. Oh, and at a farm. So they're kind of a farm brewery, must be. And they do have wit beers, Saison, double, triple. Other people do recommend doubles and wit beers for Thanksgiving. I haven't had enough of those to really say for sure. Looks like they got a couple of different styles of Saison. Petite Saison, Saison Noir, Saison Super. Excellent. Rye Saison. Very cool. I will definitely have to check them out. Rockmill Brewery. Let me get the link there and paste that in. They look like something definitely worth checking out. Again, if anyone wants to jump on camera into a seat, go ahead and feel free to do so. My recommendation for Saison for Thanksgiving dinner would be Lift Bridge, which is another local Minnesota beer. Lift Bridge, they make a Saison called Farm Girl. And I haven't had two thumbs up for Lift Bridge. Nice. Yeah, they're out of Stillwater, Minnesota. They make some good beers. I've had, I think it's, what is it, Hop Dish? Hop, well, actually, I could look it up real quick here since I have their website. Of course, it doesn't come up for me. But yeah, they have a great IPA that I like. And their Saison. Now, I don't normally drink a lot of Saison, so this is one of the ones that I do enjoy. And so when I was thinking about it, I figured it would be a very good choice for Thanksgiving dinner. Again, because of the tart, kind of citrusy, orange, lemony flavors in there. They tend to finish kind of dry. Petite Saison d'Et at LTS. You know what? I haven't, and I think that's the second recommendation that I've had for that. And actually just today, another friend of mine was telling me that they have that on tap, and so I will have to go and do a growler fill. LTS Brewing is another local to Rochester, Minnesota brewing company, or not brewing company, brewery. They basically have a tap room. You take your growlers in, fill them up. They don't can. I don't think they distribute outside of the city. So they're very, very local to Rochester, Minnesota. They have a solid IPA that I've had a couple of times. Definitely will try their Petite Saison d'Et. Let me get their website up. LTS Brewing. And LTS stands for Life's Too Short. Again, they're out of Rochester, Minnesota. Dan's got it up before I could even get it. Thank you, Dan, for doing that. Again, Life's Too Short Brewing. It seems like hopefully we get kind of this little explosion of nano breweries here in Rochester. Up in the cities, the craft beer selection is huge. I mean, there's nano breweries, and then there's breweries like Surly and Summit and Burning Brothers, and a whole lot of, indeed, a number of breweries up there that are larger, and a lot of neighborhood breweries that are great. Hopefully, Rochester gets kind of that culture and vibe going on down here. I don't think you can have too many breweries. On another show that I'm planning, we will be talking about kind of this dirty secret or dirty laundry topic in the craft beer industry, that is some smaller craft breweries are just not very good. But stay tuned for that in the future. We won't talk about that today. And I don't want to talk about any particular breweries because I don't think that's nice to call people out. But there are craft breweries out there, some small, some big, that just don't put out good stuff, and yet, they kind of they're kind of riding this crest of craft beer. Now, what is everyone else's thoughts on Thanksgiving beers? What does everyone else recommend for Thanksgiving, and why? And if you want to grab a seat, feel free to. If you just want to chat it in, I will repeat what is said, and we'll talk about it. Or I can just keep drinking Dragon's Milk with raspberries. Again, it's a great, great beer. I'm really enjoying it. I wish I had another one. Scanachi, I don't know if, did you say you were from Texas? Roof Rack Ranger asking, is Dogfish Head considered a microbrew? Scanachi, yes, is from Texas. Hi, Dan. Nice to see you on here tonight.
Good.
Dogfish Head is, I think they're still considered a micro or a craft brewery. I know that they have sort of sold out, similar to some of the others, but not completely. I think whatever his name is, I can't think of what his name is right now, but I think he is still majority stakeholder in the brewery. So it is considered still a micro or craft brewery. How are you doing tonight, Dan?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Your thoughts on Thanksgiving beers, or
any beer is good.
Any beer is good. Yes,
Whatever you like to drink,
right.
You know,
Well, and I think that's the great thing about beer is that you can have recommendations, you can have thoughts, and okay, you can try to pair it with this or that, but ultimately, it's just beer. You can drink it with almost anything.
Yeah. Have you ever had a tall grass buffalo sweat?
I've had tall grass. I've had their 8-bit. I haven't had their buffalo sweat.
Okay.
Or maybe I have. You know what? I don't have my phone on me. They were at the Rochester Craft Beer Fest in May, and I know that I've had a couple of their beers, and I know for sure that I've had their 8-bit. I'm not sure if I've had their buffalo sweat. Do you recommend that though?
Yeah, that's a really good beer. I like it. It's it's brewed in bourbon barrel. It's an oatmeal stout.
Nice.
Has a sweet taste to it. It's easy to drink,
Right.
No aftertaste, nothing like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the oatmeal, I've brewed a little bit as a home brewer. I've brewed a little bit with oatmeal, and what oatmeal does to a beer is it usually adds a little bit more mouthfeel, a little bit of I want to say thickness to the beer, and so it'll add a little bit of mouthfeel, and then it does something. I don't know if it's the proteins or I don't know the chemistry behind it, but it makes the carbonation a little more like if you've ever had beer on nitro instead of regular CO2. The bubbles are a little smaller, and it kind of makes it a little more creamy tasting or feeling in your mouth. Oatmeal kind of gives a nod to that when you brew with oatmeal. So when they're boiling it, they add oatmeal into it, and they kind of strain out the starches from there somehow. So I've done that a couple of times in the past. More effervescent, almost maybe not effervescent, I want to say, but a little more creaminess and a little more thickness to the head.
It has a more creamier taste to it.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to mention too, while we're on, is that some of the information that I got for craft beer pairings was from this book. It's called The Brewmaster's Table by Garrett Oliver. I didn't take it word for word out of there, but it's basically a good resource for if you're drinking certain beers and you're thinking, okay, well, what would taste good with it? It's a good resource to go to, and it has a little bit of history, and he's basically a proponent of real beer with real food. So if anyone's looking for something to read on pairing beers, it's kind of a good resource. It's not necessarily bedtime reading where you just kind of read it like a regular book, but it's kind of a good resource to go to sometimes.
Another dog is 1050.
Okay, yeah, 1050 by Oscar Blues. Yeah. No, they're an excellent, besides putting out excellent beer, they're an excellent brewery, and actually they have a couple of different breweries across the U.S. I think they have three of them. One in Colorado, one I want to say North Carolina, and one in Austin, Texas. And they're really doing some interesting stuff. Their location in North Carolina, they actually have a mountain bike. They're close to some mountain bike trails that are kind of world renowned. Scotchy says, before I forget to ask, do you broadcast Craft Beer Blab weekly? Yes, I do. So be sure to come back every Tuesday night, same time, and we will talk more about craft beer. In fact, I can tell you next week I am planning on doing something kind of along the lines of gift guides for craft beer drinkers and home brewers. So whether you want something on the list, or if you have ideas of what other craft beer lovers would like, or if you have somebody that you're trying to find a gift for, maybe we'll all get together and talk about what some good gifts could be. So Oscar Blues, they're close by some mountain bike trails. They actually have Roof Rack Ranger. Have you ever done a group taste test on Blab? Might be tricky to set up, but it would be cool. It would be cool. And Jonah and I have discussed the logistics of doing that, and we've tried kind of doing it a couple of times. It does take kind of a coordination, as well as possibly scheduling it out maybe a couple of weeks in advance, but it would be good. The trouble that I find with group taste test is that some beers are so regional that what I can get here in Rochester, Minnesota, and what someone can get in Rochester, New York, and what someone can get in Texas or Colorado could be difficult to coordinate. That said, there are some beers that almost everyone can get. In New Belgium, I think Oscar Blues is pretty well distributed now, so it definitely would be something cool, and I'm looking into doing that, and hopefully we'll get some more of those in the future too. Again, Oscar Blues, so they have mountain bike trails nearby in North Carolina, and then on their property they have I think they have like a bike park, like a mountain bike park with skills kind of stuff. And the owners of Oscar Blues also run a bike frame building facility called Reeb, which is beer spelled backwards. So they're very much ingrained in both the bicycle culture and beer culture. So great guys.
Yeah, they're also not going to sell out to the big companies.
Exactly. Yeah, they did. I think we read the same article that it wasn't that they weren't willing to take on investors, because they took on investors, but they purposefully looked for people outside the beer industry to input money into them, which is really smart. And I think definitely gives them big thumbs up from me for doing that, because then it kind of it takes away from having to, okay, well, Dan's audio is difficult to hear clearly. Oh,
sorry.
Yeah, it came through okay on my end, but sometimes Blab gets a little finicky about everything. So
I'm using a mic on my webcam, so it might be flaky. I don't know.
Right. But yeah, I give Oscar Blues a huge thumbs up for not selling out in the traditional way and keeping their. So instead of like selling out to a large craft or a large beer company that then obviously somebody like Budweiser or Coors, their main interest is to sell their main brand. And if the smaller brands aren't making enough money, it's easier for them to just shut it down and say, okay, no more. Or they just keep trying to mess with their formulas, and all of a sudden what was a nice craft beer, let's say Ballast Point, what was a nice Sculpin recipe is now something that's made more for the masses and maybe not as good.
Well, the other thing too is you get some of these big companies that have these craft beers. And I've seen it with Goose Island, especially.
Right.
When Goose Island was its own, you didn't see a lot on the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
But you go to a lot of stores now, they have a big presence in the shelf. Same with Ballast Point. Are they going to start pushing some of these smaller craft beer companies off the shelves because they've got influence with these stores that are selling the beer?
Right. No, yeah, that's definitely one of the main concerns, is that because these big companies have so much pull, and probably not a lot of people are aware of this, but basically the distributors can almost dictate a store to devote a certain amount of space on their shelf and in their coolers for certain beers. And so that's why it's harder for smaller beers to compete, is because you may put out enough beer for your region or whatnot to compete with Budweiser and Coors and all that, but Budweiser and Coors come in and say, you know what, you have to devote 30% of your shelf space to our product. And so all of a sudden, if Budweiser says that and Miller says that, then there's 30% of the shelf space that's left for everybody else, which then has to be divided. If they carry 50 other brands of beer, well, then the small 30% portion has to be divided amongst 50 other brands. And, people are going to lose out. So, and obviously too, stores are going to carry what sells. So, there might be a great small craft beer company that has something, but they don't have a huge following yet. You can't get them because a better known brand obviously is going to have better shelf presence. And because they're fighting for the same space as you are, they're not going to get it. And so all of a sudden you don't see this other brand anymore. And then like you said, Dan, they get bought out by somebody. Then all of a sudden, now all of a sudden there's a whole row of Goose Island where you never saw that before. So
Definitely.
All right. So I'm wondering if anyone else has any other thoughts on Thanksgiving pairings or Thanksgiving beers, or just any other beers that you've had recently that you've enjoyed. Got to check out Pliny the Elder. Yes, Russian River Brewing. That is supposedly, and I've never gotten my hands on one, Pliny the Elder and Pliny the Younger. Mm-hmm. And most of Russian River Brewing's beers come very highly recommended. They get very high ratings. They're not distributed anywhere, I think, outside of Sonoma County. Pretty damn glorious. Yeah, hard to get a hold of. I've tried doing beer trades with people to try to see if I could set something up, and nobody can get a hold of Russian River Brewing. However, we had a guest on the show a couple episodes back called Barrel Backers.
Exactly.
Which I think they're in the process of trying to get a hold of, and hopefully I just pasted that in there. Paste and enter. Okay, Barrel Backers. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to get these more rare beers in a legal way out to other people. So they have a voting system where people go in and you vote for beers that you want. If it gets over 100 votes, then they contact the brewery and they say, hey, we'd like to get your beer and be able to sell it to people online. And it's all taken care of online, but it goes through the proper distribution channels. So it's all legal. And it finally goes through the local retailer. So there is a cost. You're paying a premium for these beers. You might be able to buy let's say Pliny the Elder, you might be able to buy it for $8 at the brewery. You'd probably be paying triple that to be able to get that through barrel backers. But it's a way that they're trying to get these rare beers out to people. So check out barrel backers, because I think it's a great opportunity to be able to at least try to get some of these beers that are very rare out to different areas and basically everybody else out there.
I've been trying to find that Pliny the Elder for a long time.
Yeah, it's like, and I don't have very many people that I trade with, mostly because I don't trust other people to, I'm not going to send them $20 or $30 worth of beer in the hopes that maybe they'll send me something and then have it not show up. So I've tried a couple of trades, but again, even for the people that I do trade with, it's hard for them to get stuff. I think Pliny the Elder and Heady Topper are two that are on my top of to try lists. Again, one's from West Coast, one's from East Coast. Being in the Midwest, I'm kind of stuck in the middle.
Road trip.
Yeah, exactly. I got to get Jonah out to see if he can get some Heady Topper in Vermont and then send that over to me. But I think we're right at the top of the hour. I do thank everyone for joining in. Again, next week, 8 o'clock Central Time, we will be having the same show, except more on the ultimate gift guide for craft beer lovers or home brewers. If anybody out there has an idea of what they would like to get as a craft beer drinker as a Christmas gift, please join in and give your thoughts. I'll have a couple of items, maybe 5 to 10 on my list. Hope everyone's having a great week. Thanks for joining in, Dan. Thank you, everyone else. Roof Rack Ranger, thanks for joining in. Scanachi, thank you. No problem on the tips. Hope everyone does have a happy Thanksgiving. If anyone's looking for something to do on Thursday night, check out Bike Chat with Jonah D. Pasquale. Excellent information. I think he's just going to kind of touch bases and say hello to everyone and not have any scheduled show. But it is going to be something that he's going to just try to jump on and say hi to everyone. But thank you again, everyone. Again, my name is Gunnar Soros, craft beer lover and cyclist. Hope to see you all again next week. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yep. Thank you.